Welcome back again to Apache Kafka series. In the previous video we have seen how does the producer client works and what are the ins and outs of producer client and what happens actually when you send a message. And in this video we are going to continue with writing code or writing our Java code to write a producer client that will connect to our brokers and then produce a message. So let's get started. Here I have a project template. This is a Spring Boot project template, and I assume that you know about Spring Boot and how to write a project in Spring Boot. As you can see now, this is a Spring Boot project. It's a template with just a Spring Boot annotation. Then if you can see through my POM file, I have like the dependencies that I need. And some of the dependency actually, like the Lombok, I just add it so that can make the coding easier without wasting a lot of time. Then we also have like the Spring Boot dependency. We also have Mockito dependency, though we are not going to write any test now. And then we also have like the common jars, common libraries. These are all add-ons actually. This dependency allows us to write a Kafka or to connect and write code for Kafka or write a Kafka client. So let's get started. One of the things that we are going to do in our resources directory, we are going to create a file that is application YAML. And in this application YAML, we are going to have our configurations there. For now, all we need is like the Kafka broker. So we can write directly Kafka broker. And in this Kafka broker, like Bootstrap server, we are going to give the host, our host for our brokers, and then their ports. We have 9092. So these are the ports that we have currently of the Kafka that we have installed. So let's create a package, and that package will also be, for example, com.Kafka. Like for example, let's say just Kafka, then config. In this config, we are going to have a config file, and let's call it producer config. In this producer config, it will be a configuration file. So we are leveraging Spring Boot here. Then we'll also have our property, for example, string, and this property will be our Bootstrap server information, Bootstrap servers. And then we will also use the Spring value, and then we'll get that Bootstrap server is from Spring Kafka, yes, Kafka, then Bootstrap servers, then. So now we have this property. Next we are going to need a listener. So we are going to also, let's create another package, and then in that package we are going to have let's call it a producer, the package producer. And in this producer package we are going to have like a message producer listener. And then good. So now we have our listener. We can just make it a component. We don't have to go a lot about it. And we can also, for login purpose, I already have this from Lombok. So now our producer listener will implement producer listener interface, producer listener interface also from a Spring. So this producer listener interface has two methods that we can implement on success and on error. So the purpose of this method, when you override them, if you use the listener in your Kafka configuration, then when a message is delivered, if it is success, then the success method will be called. If there is an error also, the error message or the on error method will be called. So for now we are going to just say message was delivered or was sent successfully, or to topic. Let's say, for example, we'll give the topic, then partition, which partition is the message sent successfully. Yes. So now we have this, and we can get all this information from the record metadata topic, and then record metadata, then the partition information. Sorry, I mistyped. Oh yeah, okay, the partition information. So now we are just going to log here. We are not going to do much things. So for now we are just going to log, then we also print the exception. So these are all we need from our from our listener. So now if we go back to our config, then we can import our listener to here and set like message producer listener, message producer listener, and I will prefer for it to be used with for example constructor. No, so I only want the producer listener to be in the constructor. So after like having our producer listener now ready, one of the things we can do is to now create our bin, a template bin. But before the template bin, let's talk about the configuration, the producer config we are going to use. So let's have a private method that just return a map of string and object. That's the configuration information here. And then let's say, for example, producer config, I have to import map. Yes, so now I have import map, then producer config. So for example, producer config, let's say I'm taking a class here of any type because I want a value, just value serializer. Here there isn't like value serializer class, because for all our examples I'm going to use string as key. To produce a message you have to give the key and value serializers. So now let's have our map, and then with our informations, objects, if I can write object, then properties, properties, then we will have just a new hash map. Okay, so now that we have our map, we are going to fill the map with properties put. For example, now what we are going to do, we have keys already in Spring Boot, such as like the bootstrap server, I think, yes, server config. This is a key for the bootstrap server, and we are going to use our bootstrap server here that we have, the one that we configure in the application properties here, this IP addresses. So we are going to use it here. So next we are going to also add another property which we may need, and that property is key serializer. So now here we are saying that we need a key serializer. Let's say, yes, we have key serializer class config. Yes, key serializer class config, and then we can give the property as key serializer class config. Here we want to use a string serializer, so we have a string serializer also from Spring. Now we have string serializer, so from Kafka, then class. Next we are also going to give value serializer, and here in this case we are going to give the value that we provided here. The reason why I just take here value serializer for from the class, maybe I may send a string serializer class for value if I use both string for the key and string for the message. But for now, we are going to just stick with this. Then next, we are also going to now create a bean of the Kafka template. So let's have a bean, and then we can have a public Kafka template, and then we are going to take a string, and we may take a message, for example. For now, we didn't create that message. We'll create it in a second. But let's say we have a Kafka template now. This our method will have a Kafka templates, and then with string and object. So we have, sorry, not object, our message view. So we will create it just now, Kafka templates, and then we will have a new Kafka template. So now our Kafka template will also need the producer factory. So what are we going to use as producer factory? We can just create another default producer factory. Let's create a producer factory method, and this method will return the default producer factory. Then in the Kafka template, we are going to set our producer listener now. So this is where our listener is going to be set, and then we can return the Kafka template now. So now what we also need, we need to have another method, and the purpose of this method is just to return a producer factory. Yes, we have it here from Spring Kafka. Then it's take a string message and message view our message, and then we are going to call it default producer factory, and in this method we are going to return, and now in this we are going to call our config producer config method, and we will give it the JSON serializer class. So we give our JSON serializer, and that's all for this method. So now we have our producer factory. So one of the things now we need, let's create a message, this message class or message view that we are having here. Let's create it even here, and just make sure we have the class. Let's the class also use data. Let me call it data here, the Lombok property, and let me also implement serializable. Serial version ID. So now we will have like the ID of the message, and then we have the message itself, string. So we have the message now. So now we don't need anything more, and this message now should be used by this classes, and now the message is being used. So now our config is ready. We are now we are having an error. Oh, sorry, we are not returning the properties here, so we need to return the properties. Properties, yes. So now everything is ready with our property file. In the next video, we are going to continue with a service that use the Kafka template we have just created now, and then send a message to Kafka cluster. So until then, I hope also this video will be beneficial to someone out there. Let's continue in the next video.